Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lipford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. This week, we'll give you some tips on how to widen an existing doorway. A lot of homeowners are looking at expanding doorways a little bit, well, maybe because of wheelchairs or other reasons for doing that, but there are some real important things you have to look at and consider when you're doing that. It's not a big giant project, but it's one that may be a little over the head of a regular do-it-yourselfer. We'll tell you how to approach that.
Yeah, because the most important thing is you have to replace the header.
Right.
And if you're making the doorway wider, you're going to need a longer header above the doorway. We're also going to talk to a caller from South Carolina that has a very common problem, especially this time of year, is her bedroom is directly over the garage and the bedroom is getting way too hot. And she thinks it's because of heat rising up from the garage. So we have a couple of tips to see if we can keep her bedroom a little cooler.
And, you know, we're always trying to encourage you to make sure you have the proper exhaust that you need in your home, the correct ventilation, bathrooms, kitchens. But we have a situation here where someone has a bathroom that has a lot of moisture in it, but it's a vaulted ceiling so that there's no attic space above it. Same scenario if you have a second story. How can you get that exhaust fan in that room? We have a couple tips that'll make it happen, and a very appreciative homeowner that we provide that information to.
And I'm going to share a simple solution that's a woodworking tip on when you're gluing two pieces of wood together and you get that little bit of glue squeeze out. How do you remove that glue before it soaks into the wood grain?
Hey, I'm glad you're with us, so we'll get started. We're going to get right to the phones and try to keep moving along on getting as much information out as we can. Rosalind joins us now from Texas. Rosalind, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Hello, how are you?
Oh, everything.
Hello.
Everything's going great. I understand you're trying to tackle a problem here that a lot of people are thinking about, widening a few doorways. Tell us about it.
Yes, sir. My sister's in a wheelchair. We have a pre-existing house, and we needed to widen the doorways. And we also have to put in an ADA toilet. And so I was wondering if you could help me with that.
Well, I can, and it is a project that we've done quite a bit. I will say that widening the doorway is a very tricky project. Can be done, but you just have to go into it knowing the impact that it'll have. First of all, above your door is what's called a header, and that header is a horizontal beam that supports all of the weight above it, your ceiling joists, your roof rafters, whatever you have there. So what you basically have to do is remove a section of the wall on either the inside or outside of the doorway you're planning on expanding. And then you can move it over a little. A lot of times you'll have some electrical work to deal with, like a switch that might be nearby the door. Also in bathroom areas, a lot of times you'll run into tile walls that you also have to, work with. But the key thing there is the structure is making sure that when the header comes out, which is going to be, not wide enough when you're widening the door, because most of the time you want to get it out to 32 or 36 inches wide, you have to put in a new header. So it's really something that probably is a little over the head of most homeowners, but something a remodeling contractor that does a lot of small remodeling projects would be a very routine task for them to do. Another thing to consider is the flooring. You're going to have to deal something with the little void that you have in the flooring. A lot of times there's some creative threshold areas that you can do that. And then, of course, once access into the bathroom area, then, of course, installing a new toilet, the raised toilet, and most likely with some handles on each side. That'll be the easiest project of the task. But I would really say, Rosalind, to check maybe with your local home builders association. They always have a list of great remodeling contractors that could advise you on that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have somebody, but it's nice to know so then I know what he's doing.
Right, exactly. And
be sure he's doing it correctly.
oh no,
so I appreciate your help.
Okay, certainly glad that we could help you and point you in the right direction, and I'm sure the project will be a success. You get the right person out there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
All righty.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. You have a great weekend. Joe, I'll tell you what, I probably still underplayed that just a little bit, because to do that right, you're going to run into that electrical wiring.
Absolutely.
And then what do you do with the floor? And it just is one of those creeping remodeling syndromes that you start, a simple thing of doing that. But I have seen people that, enlarge it like that, and they don't do the header, and then it cracks and all kinds of things. It's something that a lot of people are tackling right now.
Yeah, there's no way to expand, to widen a doorway or even a window opening for a larger window, or in this case, a larger door, without replacing the header. And she had asked about the ADA toilet. They do make toilets, as Danny said, they're taller, typically 4 inches taller than a standard toilet, so that someone in a wheelchair can very easily just slide from the wheelchair onto the toilet. But they're installed just like any other toilet.
That's
There's
right.
no real difference other than they're taller.
And you know what? A lot of people that have no physical disability or limitations at all are still installing a lot of those toilets.
They prefer them, right?
A lot of people prefer those taller toilets, because some of those things are really, really low. But we better stop. We better stop there before we say something or make people feel uncomfortable. Right now, let's go to Oklahoma. Brett has a question for us. Brett, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Morning.
All right, tell us what's going on with this garage and your challenges there.
Well, we have a 30-foot by 40-foot garage attached to a walkout basement, and the garage is cinder block construction with a flat 4-inch thick concrete roof that doubles as an uncovered patio for the ground floor. Just kind of a neat setup, except that the garage is hot and humid in the summer and holds the heat, and then cold in the winter. And we need some help with how to best insulate the garage and what would be the best way to seal and protect the patio surface or the roof. Garage roof.
Okay. All right. Well, you sent us a great picture. I appreciate that. Nice looking yard. Nice looking setup here. Beautiful flag out front. I like all parts of it. But the cinder block construction, though very, very durable, is not the greatest insulator in the world. And just like you said, it'll always have that fluctuation in heat and cold. Couple different things that you could do. Let me ask you, on the inside walls, I assume that you still have it's just the exposed concrete block.
Yes, it's painted, but it's exposed, and then the ceiling or the bottom of the roof is just bare concrete.
Wow, that's like a fortress there. It's
like a bunker.
Yes,
that's a good place
pretty
when
good
those
tornado shelter.
Yeah, when those Oklahoma tornadoes fire up, I know where you're going to be hanging out. But I'll tell you, for a lot of times with pulling a car into especially during the summer, you're pulling a hot car into a hot garage. It's going to be very, very warm, and we've seen a lot of people install through the wall exhaust fans that have a louver on the outside, and you have a thermostat on the inside. So the thermostat may be set for 90 degrees, 95 degrees, whatever, and so it automatically will turn on and blow that air out. Now it's pulling air, through whatever little crack and crevice around the carport that you have. So that helps considerably in really minimizing the heat. That's a pretty good way of doing that. And even with a concrete block wall, it's not that hard to basically put a 12 by 12 or a 12 by 16 fan in there. And you can order them. I know one place is W.W. Granger catalog that I've ordered a lot of these from. And you can just basically just cut it out with a circular saw with an abrasive blade, install it, and then you'll have to have the electricity on the inside of it to power it. So that's one way from that standpoint. But when you're talking about the cold weather, Joe, I don't know, other than creating, even if you put insulation or even 1-inch foam on the inside walls, it's still not going to help. It's still not going to provide a heat source in there.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Brent. This is a pretty common question for attached garages. And you can add insulation to the roof and to the walls, but it has minimal effect. Now, in the winter, it's probably not much of an issue because you're not using, any heat that's in there cold is going up to the sort of patio above, but you're probably not out there, right? It's more in the summer, not the winter, that you're using the patio, the concrete patio. Is that correct?
Yes, but surprisingly, it doesn't get that hot on top.
Well, as far as, I think I agree with Danny. Ventilating the garage would be a great idea. And if you don't want to cut a hole, I see you have a couple of windows out back of that. Maybe you can tuck the fan into into one of those windows. And that would get rid of the humidity as well, which is probably more important than the heat, because you want to get that hot, that moist air out.
Yeah.
And then as far as you're asking sealing the top surface, the concrete patio surface, what is on that surface now? Is it painted?
Yes, just painted.
Okay, well, once you commit to paint, Brent, you're pretty much, you've got two ways to go. Either you can clean it, remove any loose paint, and repaint it, or, we typically don't recommend painting concrete because it creates a maintenance issue, within a month or a few years or whatever, where you have to constantly repair it and paint it. We usually prefer take off the paint and put on a stain. Now, of course, you could just build right over it if you have room, between the bottom of your doorways and this patio. You can, put decking down. I mean, there's a lot of other options. Have you considered that? Maybe decking over it?
No, I hadn't really. We only lived here a few months.
Okay.
So I haven't got that far. But I was wondering if sealing that top, if there was any moisture going through the concrete into the garage part, if I needed to seal that to protect that. Because
I see. You're concerned.
It's in really good shape.
Right. So you're concerned with moisture passing through from the top down into the garage. Yeah. Well, concrete is porous, so that could be the case. In which case, ventilation would be the easiest way to get rid of that moisture if it is passing down into the garage. It's just to ventilate it out with a fan.
Okay.
All right. Well, certainly hope we've been able to point you in the right direction there. Certainly a very unique structure you have there, and but I think you'll find some good results with that exhaust fan. But thanks so much for being with us here on today's Homeowner Radio.
Okay, enjoy your show and your website. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Brett. Hey, it's time for our Best New Product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Everybody knows how pivotal a lawnmower is to yard maintenance, but it's not a do-it-all tool. The key is a tidy-looking lawn is a great string trimmer. DeWalt 60V Flex Volt string trimmers designed to maximize control and minimize stress so that you can precisely tackle every angle of your sidewalk or driveway. That's because it's lightweight and its ergonomic design comes with a speed trigger, giving you full control of every cut. Its high-efficiency brushless motor creates long-lasting run times, plus the string trimmer is powered by a 60-volt max flex volt battery that powers not only 60-volt max tools, but is backwards compatible to work with 20-volt max tools. Pretty versatile tool, and you can find out more about DeWalt's 60-volt flex volt string trimmer by logging on to HomeDepot.com. Want to remind
that's the only way to go with string trimmers. I have two gas-powered string trimmers, and then I got a really nice Echo models. Then I got a cordless one, battery-powered. I don't use the gas ones anymore.
Yeah, I know it. I tell you what,
I'm going to sell them.
I know it. I know it. They certainly, and I think that's happening little by little. It's replacing. I have so many cordless tools now, and have a really, really good one like you're talking about. And then the leaf blowers as well, to be able to have these leaf blowers that have the variable speed and the locking triggers. That's pretty cool. With the new house I'm building, I'm using that every time I'm down there to blow out the whole house. I just clean the whole darn thing out. I can't stand not having it nice and clean. I know that we were talking last week about some of the things in the lawn. Last couple of weeks, we've talked about some of the things there, and got a lot of emails about different questions. And one of the questions that you hear a lot about, and I think it is, to me, I understand this concept really, really well. But for others, when they're mowing their grass, maybe they let the grass grow a little longer than they should, and then they want to mow it as low as they can. And boy, that's just one of the many mistakes people make. But a lot of you may not realize Joe Truini writes for many magazines. He's written many books all over the country. And Joe, you just tackled this for our friends at Popular Mechanics, I understand.
That's exactly right. Yeah, not too long ago, I wrote an article for Popular Mechanics on the most common mistakes homeowners make when taking care of their lawn.
And that has to be one of them, though, the cutting too
that's
much
like the first one.
Yeah, because you should only cut just a third of the blades off at any time.
Right, but that's assuming you're cutting it to the correct height to begin with.
Right.
If you're letting your grass grow 10 inches tall, then trimming off 3 inches or whatever it would be is not going to help you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I came up with, I think there are 8 or 9 mistakes that most homeowners make. And I'll quickly go through the list. The first one is exactly that, cutting your lawn too short. Typically, depending on, I mean, it's hard to say exactly, but usually 2.5 to 3 inches high is what they recommend. But that varies on the weather and the conditions and, what type of grass you have. But cutting the grass too short, mowing with dull blades, another
I was just about to say that same thing.
Because that rips the grass. It doesn't cut it. Not testing the soil. Now, you don't have to do this every month, but you should do it at least once a year. Or if you do it 2 or 3 years in a row and there's no change, and maybe you can wait every 3 or 4 years, but you should always test the soil because that's going to tell you what amendments you might need to add.
Now, what about the probes, the double tine probes that you stick down in there? How could that be accurate to tell you your pH level just by sticking something down?
Yeah, I wonder. They have these probes, these little electronic devices you stick in the ground. It tells you whether it's getting enough sun, water, and the pH. And I mean, I've never used one, so I'm not sure. I assume they work. They're selling them, but for $10, you can buy a test kit.
Yeah,
exactly. Put it in the dirt, you put it in the water, you shake it up. So that's all you need to do. And this is an interesting one, but it's a mistake to bag the clippings. You really don't need to do that. And the reason you don't bag the clippings, especially if you're using a mulching mower, you don't have to because a mulching mower is designed to cut the grass, and then the mowing deck is designed to suspend those clippings in the air long enough for the blades to cut it several times into smaller and smaller pieces and blow it down through the grass close to the soil level. And that's really good for the grass because it's full of moisture and nutrients, all that grass. But in any case, so they recommend not bagging the clippings. Now, if you see clumps of grass clippings stuck together in a row or a big clump on your lawn, you have to rake that out because if it sits there, it'll smother it. That's why it's also not a good idea to mow grass when it's really wet. And then you should also dethatch and aerate. Those are 2 things few people do, but it's a really good idea to dethatch, which basically means using a rake or a power rake to remove the dead debris that's down on the soil level. And also to aerate, basically mean punching holes in it, again, to allow nutrients and water into the soil and into the feed the grass. Improper fertilization. Either you're not fertilizing or you're fertilizing too much or the wrong fertilizer. And again, it's hard to give exact advice because it depends on where you live in the country. Overwatering. There's a big one.
Really?
People think, well, if a little water's good, a lot of water's got to be even better.
And that's where all those diseases and the fungus and everything else rolls in. Yeah,
right. So you don't want to overwater. And you're supposed to, I think you're supposed to water 1 inch a week. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to know that, but I guess there are ways to test it. But you can, if it's raining, obviously you don't water. And how often have we seen automatic sprinklers going on in a rainstorm? You're like, where do you think all that water's going? It's not, any plant can drown, so you want to be careful of that. And then the last one, in the fall, people make the mistake of not raking up the leaves before winter sets in for good. Because if you get a wet pile of leaves or even a thin layer of wet leaves sitting on top of that soil, it's going to smother the grass. And then come spring, you're going to have a mess. So those are 9 quick things to keep in mind this year as you're taking care of your lawn.
Right now, we're going straight back on today's Homeowner Hotline. Peggy is in South Carolina. Welcome, Peggy.
Well, thanks so much. How are you?
I'm doing fine, but it sounds like you're hot under the collar a little bit here, and a real kind of common problem sometimes. But tell us about your particular situation.
Well, we have a new build, so the house has just been built 2 years now, and we have a bedroom. The master bedroom is over top of the garage, and the garage is totally drywalled and has insulation, and the ceiling in the garage has R19 insulation also, but there are no ducts in the garage, and it is hot in the upstairs bedroom. We're not sure what else to do. We just recently put the NASA reflective core garage door insulation in, and it has made a big difference, but we have sun, 8 months out of the year. And sun and heat. So we're in the high 90s a lot of the time all summer. So we're trying to figure out how to keep that cooler.
What type of flooring do you have in your bedroom? Is that carpet?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. Well, all of that sounds great. I mean, even though having a hot box under your bedroom is going to allow that heat to generate, and even though you have the insulation and drywall and carpet and everything, it'll find its way up through there to a certain degree. So reducing the heat in your garage should help a fair amount. Now, we were actually speaking with a caller just a few minutes ago in Oklahoma that that was having a similar situation there. And what we recommended there, which really works very well, is a in-wall exhaust fan that has a louver on it, has a thermostat on the inside. It's not unattractive at all, and you can put it right in the wall. And then you have a thermostat that may be set on 90 or 95 degrees, and the temperature gets up like that. It's going to blow that hot, moist air out through the wall. Now that will lower the temperature in the garage and should help in the room itself. But Joe, don't you think with it being only a couple years old, that air conditioning should be able to compensate anything like that?
Yeah, you would think. Peggy, I had a quick question. What is directly above your bedroom? Is that an attic space, or is that a second story of a home? Of the house?
No, it's an attic space.
Attic. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing you need to do is check in the attic, make sure you have enough insulation up there, because you want to block that heat coming down from the attic, because that gets extremely hot. So you want to make sure you have enough insulation up there, and you're probably we're talking about maybe 16 inches of insulation. And then you said you had R19 in the ceiling of the garage. Now, yes. R19 is usually good for designed for use in a 2x6 space. And I can't imagine that ceiling of a garage would be framed just with 2x6s. I mean, maybe it is, but there's not much you can do about it now. But that sounds like you might not quite have enough insulation. But
now here's my question.
Go ahead.
I'm not going to pull the ceiling down.
No, I wouldn't recommend doing that.
That's a big job. So, would it help to put any kind of insulation on top of that drywall?
That is a very common question that gets asked all the time. When I first thought about it for our garage, because we have a similar situation, only we have a family room above it, and I checked it out, there's almost nothing you can really add. I thought if I put on some furring strips as an air space and then some thick foam, like 1-inch thick foam, and everyone I talked to, all the engineers and the insulation experts said, to tell you the truth, you're never going to get your money back, and it's not really that effective. And I'm not even really sure why, to tell you the truth, but for some reason it just doesn't really work that way. So there's really not much you can do except ventilate that space and get that hot air out.
Okay, because when I put that NASA reflective core garage door insulation stuff on it, that was an amazing difference just in the garage alone. And we keep it closed, of course, so it doesn't get any more heat. But I just wondered, because it comes in a roll and it's just double-sided tape to put it on. And I just wondered, would that help if I just put that on the ceiling? It has a silver foil on one side that you don't see and then a white on the other. But no, you don't think so?
It wouldn't hurt. But I'm not sure it would really help.
Yeah, I don't think it'll really help. I really think the exhaust fan is guaranteed to lower the heat in there. And then, as Joe mentioned, with the insulation in your attic, you want to make sure that you have at least 14 inches of insulation in the attic above your bedroom. That's a big one right there, because the heat of that attic is going to bear down on it. So I would check that out real carefully and maybe get an air conditioning man to see if he can't boost that air conditioning into that bedroom a little bit more.
Okay, we'll try that. We did have him come out and check that, and he did. There are 4 registers in there, and he said there's plenty of cold air coming out. So the next thing was just trying to tint the windows and seeing if there was anything else we could do. So
every little bit will help there, and I certainly hope you can find that combination that'll bring that heat down a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck, Peggy.
Our pleasure. This time of the year, that's, and you still have houses being built that are 2-story with just one air conditioning heating system, which unless you really have an elaborate zone system that can control that scenario, that's almost impossible. The guys upstairs are always going to be hot, and it's just one of those things that poorly engineered. But so many municipalities and code departments of towns are requiring the manual J, which is your calculation for heating and cooling, and taking a little more of an advanced step at that to make sure that you don't have these kind of problems. So hopefully she'll be able to.
Every home should have zoned heating and cooling. I can't imagine why you'd build any house without as many zones as possible. If you don't use one, you turn it off.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, saves a lot of money overall. One of the things we like to do is to feature some of our recorded calls where people have called the Today's Homeowner Hotline, which you can do anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's 800-946-4420. And then you can leave us a question, and you're welcome to leave your contact information so that we can get back with you. But sometimes people ask the question, and we want to make sure we don't leave any of those out. So we like to tackle a few of those questions. We'll do that right now.
I have a woodworking bench, and some of the wood on there is plexi wood. So I'm wondering if I should build a brace to reinforce that on the underside, because some of that wood is very delicate, and I don't know if what I should do.
Well, I tell you what, I'm not real sure if you're talking about plexi. I don't know if it's plexiglass or something else, but putting something on
maybe
top,
particle board,
maybe particle board,
plexi wood is,
yeah. If it's starting to fail, putting something on top of it, it's like building something on a faulty foundation. I guess I think it's going to be much better to try to remove whatever you have there. Hopefully, the legs and whatever is supporting it is sufficient. Then I would go with at least a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood. Hard to beat that, and you can certainly work on that. You can attach a vise to it or anything along those lines, but it's hard to go on top of a good material on top of bad. I would consider replacing the whole thing.
Hi. First of all, I love your show. Second of all, I have a ceiling fan, and I know the blades go in one direction in winter to keep the heat, and they go in another direction in the summer to remove the heat. Could you please tell me if they go clockwise, counterclockwise, whatever?
Okay, yeah. Most fans can be reversed. Now, not all fans can, depending on the age of the fan, and sometimes the switch is actually on the motor housing itself. More often than not, more modern fans, it's on the switch on the wall switch or on the remote. But in any case, you want it, if you were to, the easiest way to describe it, if you were to lay on the floor directly underneath the fan, the blade should go counterclockwise in the summer, so it's blowing air down. In the winter, you want to go the opposite direction, clockwise, and that will it'll blow up, which means it'll trap any air, hot air that's warm air that's trapped at the ceiling, it'll circulate it down into the room. So for the summer, you want them going counterclockwise. Okay, let's go to the next question.
I'm on my 50th house.
Wow.
40th,
wow.
Which is, and I've got a porch on this house. It has a room underneath of it. A concrete slab is leaning towards the house. And I can't slab jack it because it has a room underneath it. I need to know what I can put on the porch to level it out. The water's running into the basement, and we just waterproofed it.
Okay, yeah, that's tricky. First of all, you need to make sure you seal it very well against the house. But if the rain is pushing the water flowing back towards the house, which is probably either faulty workmanship or a little bit of settling that's taking place over the years, about the only thing you can do is to cap over the existing concrete. Now, that's not an easy process, especially to make it nice and smooth. There's a lot of products available through Quikrete. I would recommend you go to Quikrete.com and look at their resurfacer, their topping mixes, and really read the thicknesses that you can go with. Now, you might also get a nice straight 2x4 and put it down on top of the slab, put your level on top of it, probably a 4-foot level, and then raise that 2x4 up to see just how thick you're going to have to go. If it's 1/2 inch, you would use one type of material. If it's 1.5 inches, you got to go with a different type of material. So you want to determine just how much of a bed of concrete or a recap of concrete you'll need, and then you'll be able to find the solution there at Quikrete. And you'll have to decide whether or not it's something that you can tackle or get an experienced concrete finisher to handle.
Hello, I have a exposed aggregate driveway. It's about 20 years old. I haven't had any treatment on it for the last 15 years. I have a number of cracks that come through each section. I'm wondering if there's something I could fill the cracks in before I seal it.
Yeah, there are plenty of concrete crack fillers. Now, as we said in the past, when you patch concrete cracks with a filler, you sometimes are highlighting the cracks, but it's better to fill them and have them be highlighted than to leave them open because they're going to absorb water. And I'm not sure where you live, but if it gets cold enough in the winter and that water expands, it turns to ice and expands, it's going to widen those cracks. So, and with an exposed aggregate driveway, it might be even more noticeable, but you could either use a cement product, meaning a powder you mix with water, or you can use something out of a caulking gun, which I would probably recommend. Vacuum it, clean the crack really well, and then use a caulking gun to apply it. The reason I prefer the caulking type is that it's more flexible and it might last a little longer.
The mold that is starting to form on a composite deck, the deck seems like it's the boards that were cut on the end. It seems like where most of the mold is starting to form. What is a good product to use to get rid of that mold?
Okay. And, composite decking, everybody hopes that it's sealed off enough that you don't have moisture getting in it that creates mold. But that's going to happen, especially if there's a fair, any kind of buildup of debris of any kind on that. It kind of creates that haven for mold to grow. So it's all about cleaning, and you can use TSP. We recommend that a lot, trisodium phosphate, available at any of the home centers or paint stores. You can also use other, regular just detergent of any kind in order to clean it. And oxygen bleach is another great option for that because it will have a bit of a residual effect to try to, keep that mold and mildew off. But I would get it good and clean, and I would consider using some Wet and Forget that we recommend a lot. They have an outdoor spray that's so easy to use. And once you get it nice and clean, you can spray it on there, and you know what? The mold will be gone. It's not going to come back. Then you can respray it every, 6 or 8 months to make sure that it gets away. So there's a few recorded questions we were able to work in this week's show, and you're welcome to call the Today's Homeowner Hotline, 800-946-4420. One of the popular things that we feature each week here on Today's Homeowner is our simple solution, and this is all thanks to my buddy Joe's innovative, genius way about himself.
Genius! Wow.
Yeah.
Hope we're recording this because I want to make sure
he can take that word. Dennis can pull that word out if you don't behave. So.
Yeah. I saw you had a little trouble spitting that out, but good for you. Okay, Danny. Here's a simple solution. It's a woodworking tip, actually. When you're gluing together two pieces of wood, there's always a little bit of glue that squeezes out of the joint, right? And so now, what do you do with that? If you just wipe it with a cloth, you have a tendency to drive that wet glue into the grain of the wood. And although it looks like it's gone, once it dries and you go to refinish it, you put on some stain or whatever, and you realize, hey, there's some glue under there. And it's pretty hard to get rid of at that point. So here's a simple solution. Take a plastic straw with a pair of scissors, snip off the end of the straw at a really sharp angle, and then pinch it. Pinch it really hard so it forms a little pointed spout. And then what you do is just slide that along that joint, and you'll see it'll scoop out. I mean, it won't get 100% of the glue, but gets pretty close. If you hold it just at the right angle, it'll scoop up the glue because, of course, the excess glue gets forced up the inside the straw. And then if there's any glue left over, then you can come by with a damp cloth, a damp white cloth, cotton cloth, and just wipe up that little bit of glue. But that is one of the best ways to seal that joint. To strengthen that joint with glue, but not having the glue seal the wood grain so you can't finish it. So try that during your next woodworking project.
That's a great way. And you recommend a plastic straw on that, I guess?
Yeah, I would. I mean, they're getting harder to find as they're getting banned more and more. But at least now we have a use for them instead of throwing them in the ocean.
Get out and buy all those plastic straws that you can because you won't be able to buy them before long. But another great simple solution. And I'll tell you what, there's almost 500 of them waiting on you right now at todayshomeowner.com/simple solutions. And of course, there's thousands of videos there. There's thousands of articles, all designed to help you with any little challenge that you may have around your house. Plus, a little inspiration along the way. Some great checklists, calculators, a lot of things happening there on todayshomeowner.com. And I'll tell you what, in approximately a month, the entire new website will be launched on Today's Homeowner. That'll have even more features and even more information that you'll be able to use to have the best looking house on the block. On this week's podcast question of the week, which we encourage you to send any question that you might have, we'll try to get to as many of these as we can. You can send us one by going to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Mark sent in a question here. It said, I purchased a home that had baseboard heat fed by copper water lines to the heating unit. I removed all the baseboard heaters in favor of a heat pump for cooling and heating. Now, there are hardwood floors throughout the house. Everywhere a copper pipe came through the floor, there's a hole. Sizes ranging from about 1 inch to 3 inches. Wow.
That's a big hole.
It sure was. How can I repair those holes? I have some of the original hardwood flooring I salvaged from another remodeling project from the house that I could use. Well, that's good because that would be usually the hardest part of it all. But it's so hard, even if it's fairly small holes, to really put in putty and patch it and that kind of thing, because you'll always see it. So if you're able to carefully remove each of those pieces of hardwood that have the holes in them. Now, that's not as easy as it sounds, because the tongue and groove makes that a little tricky to fish that board out of there, doesn't it, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, the technique is to drill through each end of the board, near the end of the board, with like a spade bit, and then connect those two holes with a circular saw. And what you're doing essentially is removing the center of that board.
That's right.
Then you chop out the tongue edge and the groove edge from the board, and then you can slip a piece in, and the pieces slip in. You have to remove the bottom section of the groove.
Right.
So what you do is you slip in the tongue, and then you press it down, and of course now you get the tongue holding one edge of the board down, but nothing holding the other edge, because you've removed the bottom of the lip of the groove edge, so that you have to face nail it. But yeah, I mean, for the smaller holes, I've seen people just pound in, like in this case, if it's an oak floor, let's say, you pound in a round oak plug, sand it, cut it off, sand it flush. But you do always see that round plug.
Yeah,
isn't very attractive.
But
right?
So
I would recommend removing
what's it called?
the board.
It's called character, isn't it? A little character on the floor. So.
Okay, when it's in someone else's house, it's character. When it's in your house, it's like, oh, boy,
it's an eyesore,
can we put the couch right here?
Yeah. Well,
just line up all your furniture.
And we have some videos on where we actually did something similar to this in showing how to splice in hardwood floors. We actually took a center heater out of a center of a home. Actually, it was Chelsea's home that had hardwood floors, and then we had to splice in all of the wood. Very similar, because we had to remove pieces here and there. So you might check that out at today's homeowner.com/videos. But it
Danny,
can't.
Excuse me. I was going to say there's one other thing I just thought of. There's a repair called the Dutchman patch, which is basically a patch of wood that you put over. In this case, it would be the hole. And what you do is route a rectangular recess in the board. You want to go from edge to edge and make it as as wide as you need to do it. Go over the hole, and then let's say you make it a 1/4 inch deep. Then you just take a 1/4 inch piece of wood that matches the floor, and you glue it right over it.
I got you.
Then you don't see it, and you're just going over. I mean, that takes a little bit more skill.
Yeah.
You'd need a template for the router, but that's another way to do it. Especially if you have a lot of holes. If you have a template, speeds up the process a little bit.
And certainly having some wood that you can use if it matches. But then you have the challenge of sanding it down and matching that stain. But it can be done, and if you're refinishing all of the hardwood floors, then that's the time to do it, is replace all of those boards. Best of luck to you, Mark. Thanks for sending in that question. And again, if you have a question for us, send it in right now. Today's homeowner.com/podcast. Also, while you have your laptop out, go ahead and send in a favorable review for this podcast. That's the way the podcast world works, that you send in a nice favorable review. More and more people find out about us, and we're able to share our style of home improvement information with a lot of other folks. We really appreciate you being with us here. I'm Danny Lipford along with Joe Truini. Thanks for listening to this week's podcast, and we look forward to being with you again next week.